The Dallas Mavericks are just soaring right now on an all-time high in terms of being able to not just win this series against the Timberwolves, but to do so in crushing fashion. And first time Luka has ever made the finals, of course. This was another terrific team performance where they were all over the Timberwolves really from the start. Now, it was Luka that was really the one who got out to the extremely hot start. He scored 20 points by himself in the first 9.5 minutes of the game. Actually outscored the entire Timberwolves team in that first quarter. And it was just a shame to see the Timberwolves come out like this, who I have been, as well as a bunch of other people, have been really big fan of. But there was just no intensity, especially on that defensive side of the ball from them in this game. If you go back and look at the contests, especially in that red-hot first quarter against Luka, he was just getting everything at will. And, as much as we love Anthony Edwards and he has an extremely bright future, he's taking on the defensive assignment in this game, and there's not really a point to having your best player tire himself out on the defensive end if he's only gonna sort of half do so anyways. And again, this game isn't even to be put on the shoulders of Anthony Edwards. He and Karl Anthony Towns were actually both pretty good in this game. Towns scored 28 points, 12 rebounds. We saw him driving to the rim and getting himself looks. That was encouraging. I think it was a pretty similar offensive performance as Game 4, where we saw definitely a turnaround with him in terms of his approach working sort of inside out. But once again, he was off from 3 in this game, where he finished 1 of 6, and it just wraps up a really poor 3-point shooting series from Towns, where he was 8 of 33 total on his 3-point attempts in this Western Conference Finals, just 24% from 3. Like I mentioned, can't put it on him necessarily. This game in particular, him and Ant, both 28 points, so, they were the only Timberwolves who finished in double digits. But I think that, again, just, the Timberwolves came out so flat here. And I thought that for this team that seems like they are so hungry to not have any of that intensity at home in this, game facing elimination, it was really disappointing to see. Now, credit Dallas for their defense, because as much as it was Luka, just kind of stealing the morale from, any potential Timberwolves run, their defense also made things extremely difficult, and which is part of, I think, compounded with the fact that Luka was getting everything at ease. The fact that it seemed like every single Timberwolves possession was coming down to the final seconds in the shot clock. In these past couple of games, we saw these ridiculous, Rudy Gobert is getting these entry passes with just seconds left on the shot clock, and it's Karl Anthony Towns and it's Anthony Edwards feeding him. And, I just don't think that is any way to win a playoff game in a series. And now they won Game 4, so touche, I guess, but they were never going to be able to match what Luka and Kyrie were putting out on their side with a very Rudy Gobert-centric offense. And, in an elimination game like that, I thought it was way too many offensive possession touches for Rudy Gobert, who took 7 shots in the first quarter. And, through these first couple of quarters, you're seeing him getting these paint touches and making these running jump passes back out to the perimeter. And I'm watching this like, what are we doing here? And listen, I don't want to dump all over Rudy Gobert. Everybody has done that in the media up to this point through, kind of a lot of the playoffs, but especially so in this series, given the sort of back and forth between him and Luka. But I just don't think in a do-or-die game you can lean on Rudy Gobert being the centerpiece of your offense so much. So that was, again, just another, big red flag to me in terms of the Timberwolves' approach in this game. But The Mavericks end up demolishing the Wolves in this game. They led by as much as 36 points. The broadcast pointed to it. It was a little bit reminiscent of the Dallas's Game 7 matchup against the Suns in 2022. That was the second round to send the Mavericks to Luka's first conference finals, and they just waxed the Suns 123-90. In that game, Luka scored 35 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, which is eerily similar to what he had in this game where it was 36, 10, and 5. So, he was incredible in both of these performances, and again, just sort of ripping the hearts out of the other team with his individual scoring was just, he's such a pleasure to watch from, an offensive perspective. Listen, I know there's the complaining about the refs and everything. That is definitely a lot less fun to watch with him, but, he's a genius on the offensive side of the ball, and it is tons of fun to watch. And, I mentioned that Game 7 versus the Suns in 2022, the internet never forgets anything, so the clip of Anthony Edwards during that game in 2022 had posted on his Instagram story just a video of the scoreboard and was saying, just talking a little bit of smack about the Suns and called it, quote, a disgrace. And, everything sort of comes around. It's a lot easier said than done, and the Timberwolves found that out the hard way in this game where they end up, getting blown out as well. But no surprise here, Luka Doncic wins the Western Conference Finals MVP. He averaged 36.4 here. I think it might have also been 32.4, a little bit of a mishap there on the graphic, but 9.6 rebounds, 8.2 assists on 43% shooting splits. He hit the big shots in Game 1 and Game 2. He, in some big moments as well, stepped up on the defensive side of the ball. The lob breakup that he had against Rudy Gobert in that Game 2 matchup really stands out as well. Now, for whatever it's worth, I think that we get a little bit carried away whenever Luka does play defense, that we could maybe overrate it a little bit. But again, just to see that there is, a more consistent effort on that side of the floor is definitely very encouraging to see. And you have to commend him for it, along with the fact that he is operating everything on the offensive side of the ball. So really, really hard to sort of complain about anything that Luka put out in this series, and there was no question that he deserved it. And, this is definitely going to be, so it is 32.4 points per game, by the way. Not sure how that mishap happened, but, I think that this is going to be the launching point for the Mavericks headed into the finals here, where there's going to be a lot of buzz from the media about the idea of Luka being the best player in the NBA. And, again, the launching platform of this series definitely does help to defend that as well. But like I mentioned, Kyrie was also tremendous in this game. 36 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds. And he, I mentioned the stat about Luka Doncic single-handedly outscoring the Timberwolves in the first quarter. Eventually, he was going to need some help. Kyrie and Luka combined for 44 in the first half, which actually still had the lead against the Timberwolves, where it was 44-40 at halftime, in terms of that comparison. But Kyrie, we've been talking about it all postseason, the way that he is this sort of perfect Robin. He's finally accepted being the number 2 option, and as a result, we are seeing him play some of his best basketball of his career. 14 of 27 from the field last night, doing so with elite efficiency. And the last thing I sort of want to talk about here in terms of this game and the series as a whole is the impact of Dereck Lively. And this is somebody who I myself wasn't really sure about him coming into this season. He was one of the top high school prospects in the country headed into his freshman season at Duke. But that Duke year was really weird for him, where there was just no spacing around him whatsoever. Obviously, nowhere near the same level of, ball handler and such. Not fair to compare any college player to what Luka and Kyrie have provided him this season. But as a result, we have seen him flourish, and doing so in a little bit of a platoon role with Daniel Gafford. But he, during the series, averaged 9.5 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game, 1.5 blocks. That's actually his stats for the entire postseason so far. And, sorry, I'm all mixed up. That was for the series. And, I think that with Lively, this is the second straight season that we have seen a rookie make a massive impact for a championship contender, where last year it was Christian Brown for the Denver Nuggets. And, it's when you're talking about bringing in these rookies and having them be contributors, you can't expect a rookie to be the do-it-all player that has the offense sort of in their hands. But Lively, Brown, both sort of these players that are just great glue guys, are really smart with some of their anticipation and working off ball in particular, that they've, carved out these massive roles for themselves. And you look at sort of the contributions of rookies across the board, where we saw also Ben Shepherd for the Pacers playing big minutes. We saw Cason Wallace for the Thunder. And as we sort of dive into this next CBA in the NBA in terms of how teams are going to be able to manage contracts, having these, pro-ready young guys on cheap rookie contracts are going to be a massive part of that. And again, you're not necessarily ever going to get, I don't think, somebody on their rookie contract being able to, give you finals MVP level contributions. But this sort of around the edges stuff that Lively has done, going 16 for 16 in this series. He has the second highest all-time plus minus by a rookie in the postseason, second to only Manu Ginobili. So it has just been, so fun to watch Lively. From the day that he stepped in the NBA, I want to say he might have made his debut against Victor Wembanyama. And at that time, obviously, two very different players. You're going to take Wembanyama over Lively, but Lively looked like the athleticism that he had with some of the instincts that he had were going to immediately make an impact in the NBA. And that's what he's done so far to help the Mavericks get to this place. So wanted to give him some credit there. But we are going to be taking our first break of the show now, and when we come back on the other side, I want to take a look at this from the Timberwolves perspective and ask the question of should they be running it back for next season, because a lot of people consider them to be one of these young and up-and-coming teams, but there are actually some numbers that would disprove that to some degree. So I want to dive into all of that, which we will right after this quick break. Stick with us, and we will be right back.